and welcome to Gar Borras' Time Machine. Gar, this is episode 41, and we're going to be doing one you and I have talked about doing for a while now, and we're going to be talking all about This Is Spinal Tap. Now, Gar, when we first discussed doing this, you were sharing with me kind of, you want to talk about your initial reaction to when you saw the film years ago, so why don't we get into that?
Well, every time Spinal Tap gets brought up, I always tell this story because I guess I was one of those musicians at that time that was taking himself really seriously.
Okay.
And when they came out with that movie, they were basically poking fun at me.
Yeah.
And I didn't see the humor in it because, you know what I mean, I was in a different mindset at the time.
Sure.
I was taking myself seriously as a musician. And it's funny because when I was looking into the research and stuff like that, that was one of the effects that they were talking about that the movie had.
Yeah.
The more a musician took themselves seriously, the closer they were to what Spinal Tap was portraying. Even though Spinal Tap was portraying that tongue-in-cheek serious musician as a tongue-in-cheek. You see what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah.
They're doing it as a tongue-in-cheek, but I took it they were as they were making like fun of me.
Oh yeah. And
it's funny, because now it's a term. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure.
When you take yourself seriously like that, people will say, "Oh, that's so Spinal Tap."
Yeah, it is. I was reading about that. It's actually become a term, but who would have thought the name of this movie would become a term that people would start using? But just to give people an idea again when we're talking, the release date for the movie was March 2nd, 1984, so it's going to be turning 40 years next year. Directed by Rob Reiner, what's interesting about this film is this was his directorial debut. Many people knew Rob Reiner, of course, from All in the Family, and then he left because he wanted to start directing stuff, and this is the very first thing he ever directed.
It was a great one too. I mean, what a wow one to do, because even though it didn't have this huge amount of success when the movie was released in theaters, by the time it got released on video, it became this huge cult following.
Sure.
And then all of a sudden, like, all of the people that got it, were renting the video. So it's kind of trippy how, when it first started out, it wasn't really all that successful, but then it gained traction later.
Sure.
And it was one of those movies that really got the movie studios to pay attention to video as a viable
option,
a metric to measure success.
Sure, and
because up until that point, they were not paying attention to videotapes, and that it was all about the theater, the theater numbers.
Oh, sure, and again, as you're saying, over the course of time, it has become a cult classic. That's how they refer to it now. And what's interesting is, it was written by Christopher Guest, Michael McKean, Harry Shearer, and Rob Reiner. All the guys that played, the guys in Spinal Tap, they were part of a writing team. And what is interesting to find out is that this was the first movie ever where it was practically everything throughout the movie, the actors for the most part ad-lib. So because of that, Rob Reiner initially wanted to credit everybody in the film as a writer, but the American Writers Guild would not allow him to do that.
Yeah, that's trippy. It's semantics, really.
Yeah. And what I found really kind of fun about the film is I remember, being a teenager at the time when the film came out, and not even realizing at the time, like Michael McKean, who plays David St. Hubbins, one of the musicians in Spinal Tap, the frontman. I had no idea that was the guy that played Lenny from Lenny and Squiggy, from Laverne and Shirley when the film initially came out. And if you think about it, you just watch the film initially, and you don't even know maybe who some of these actors are. At the time, I thought they were really those guys. I thought that's really who those guys were. And then all these years later, you realize, okay, no, they're wearing wigs and they're in disguises. But not only did they look the part that they were supposed to play, they sounded the part. I mean, as an actor, it's a when you got to put on a British accent like that and do it all the way through the film, that's the hard thing to do. But they got those voices down.
Well, they did an incredible job, because the ultimate compliment that you can give to an actor is when you think that the actor is actually the character that they're portraying.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When you're in the store and you see that particular actor, you're going to yell out the character's name, not his real name.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they did such a good job at portraying that they were musicians that after the movie was released, the public thought that they were a real band that toured, and you see what I mean? They thought it was a mockumentary, not a documentary.
Yeah.
But everybody thought it was a real documentary. And they really thought that they were musicians. And I was told, I don't know if it's true, but I was told that the different characters were based on a particular musician. Michael McKean's, I guess David St. Hubbins, was based on Robin Zander, hence the blonde hair, the suit and the top, how he dressed, very Robin Zander-esque.
Oh, okay.
Robin Zander dressed rock and roll, but more of a dapper rock and roll.
I mean,
you know what I mean? Yeah. And then Christopher Guest's character was based on Jeff Beck.
Wow.
Because when you take him and you put a picture of him right side by side Jeff Beck, you can definitely see the similarities. Oh my gosh. He really, you can tell that Jeff Beck was his influence for his character. And then, of course,
Harry Shearer. Harry Shearer
that plays the bass player, Lemmy, Motorhead.
Yeah. In fact, so
they actually took actual people to develop their character and base their character or influence their character by.
Oh yeah, it's so
kind of trippy. I don't know if it's true, but it really does make sense, and I really bought it when it was brought up to me.
Christopher Guest played the part of Nigel Tufneland on vocals and guitar. Harry Shearer played, as you said, the bass player Derek Smalls, and so again, what's interesting is like even Rob Reiner, who directed the film, he's part of the film. He cast himself as this guy Marty, who's supposed to be the director, the filmmaker making the so-called mockumentary. He's supposed to be following the guys on the road, and it's just kind of one mishap after another. I mean, one thing that really stood out to me, for example, was the autograph signing in the record store where not a single fan shows up. Yeah.
Every band has experienced that, and that's the reason why they put it in the script. They must have been fed food for or fuel for storyline.
Yeah.
by musicians. They had to have gotten their ideas, of musicians telling their different stories of different things, trials and tribulations that they've gone through, and so many of them are, and the airheadedness. Sure. Of their how they portrayed their characters, because they definitely played their characters with a lot of airhead, not super highly intelligent, people, and unfortunately, musicians live up to that stereotype. Yeah. All, and it's so funny, because when you say that, immediately, just like anyone, if you take a group and you say a group has this character, well, I don't do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But, there's always going to be, musicians that it doesn't portray, but it does portray the stereotype musician, that there are a lot of musicians that live up to that stereotype and perpetuate that stereotype. And again, Gar, one thing this film is really great at, as you were just kind of talking about, is, there's one thing in the film that, this film coming out in 1984, they could have had no way of knowing this, but in a way they kind of predicted something that would be huge in like hard rock and metal history, which was come 1990. Okay, well, talking about Spinal Tap, the movie here, their album is called Smell the Glove. It supposedly got this controversial sexist record cover of its band, and they can't get it in any of the record stores. And another funny thing that's about Spinal Tap is it even mentions that one of the people at the record label is like, oh, we can't get Kmart and Sears to carry their record because they think the album cover is sexist and they don't want it in their stores. Okay, for one thing, Sears and Kmart, these were huge stores back in the day. No longer, either one of them are around. They're out of business. And the other thing about the album cover is eventually, the way they supposedly get their album in the record stores is they decided to come up with an all black album. Hence Metallica's Black Album from 1991. And I just think that's kind of a funny bit they have there. They could have had no way of knowing that was going to take place years later. Well, Metallica, admits that they actually did the Black Album because of Smell the Glove. Yeah, in fact, I remember when they released the Black Album, and Spinal Tap was hitting the road for real. And they actually released an album, and the guys in Spinal Tap went up to Lars Ulrich and James Hetfield and said, "Excuse me, Black Album? I think you might have got that from somewhere." Yeah, and every band, like when you're playing at a large venue, and where you have to do that trek to the stage. Oh yeah. Every band, when you're making that trek, every single time makes a reference to Spinal Tap when they're making that walk. Yeah. From their dressing room to the stage. Have you ever experienced something like that, playing any of your shows? So that's why I'm telling you. Yeah. Actually, every time we play, a large venue like that, where it's an actual trek from your dressing room to the stage, every single time I know we're not the only one. Yeah. Obviously not. There's no way because it just comes so naturally when you're making that trek, to make a Spinal Tap reference or, that kind of a thing. Yeah. Especially if you take a wrong turn. Yeah, I love when they come up to the guy, it's the janitor or whatever, and he's like telling him, you go this way, go straight, then make a left turn, make a right, and then they try to follow his direction, and they end up right back where he is. And they're like, he's like, you must have made a wrong turn. That's perfect. Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. there's so much, that you have to pay attention to what they're saying, because, this is another thing. You brought it up earlier. Spinal Tap is one of the, if not the first, it's one of the first movies that had mostly improvised scripts.
Yeah.
They would improvise when they were actually filming and stuff. And back in those days, that just was not done.
Oh yeah,
it's not a thing, and but if they weren't the first one, they were part of that wave where it's actually a thing now, where when they make movies, it's fully intended to be improvised.
Yep.
Ballad of Ricky Bobby. That movie is mostly improvised.
Yeah.
And you can tell if you didn't know, you can't write scripts like that where they just throw out this line and that line and they're if everybody could improvise like these people do, like the people that are really, really good at it.
Yeah.
Then everybody would do it, and it wouldn't be a big deal. But it's almost like when you're capturing improvisation like that, it's almost like you're capturing lightning in a bottle.
Oh, sure. And now, Gar, I want to now get into kind of the development of the film and these characters. And this is where it gets really interesting. It said Michael McKean and Christopher Guest first met in college in the 1960s in New York. And the two played music together at that time. Now here's an interesting thing. This isn't kind of like the Monkees, where these guys are mostly actors and none of them have a clue about playing music. See, that was the thing, is a lot of people initially saw the film, thought, oh, these guys are just comedians, they're actors. Kind of, I guess you could compare it to now something like, what's the name of that band? Steel Panther. You might compare it to something like that. This is a spoof, this is a joke. But these guys actually knew how to play their instruments. They actually knew how to play music. And that's the thing, is that, years later, I think around 91 or 92, that, like I said, when Metallica just released the Black Album, I remember Spinal Tap coming out, and they released, first new music in years, and they actually went on tour, all these guys as a band. So these were guys that were more than just actors and comedians. They could actually play their instruments, and they took it on the road to kind of prove people, yeah, we can be a real band,
Yeah, they really weren't that strong.
yeah, but
I have to admit, I wanted them to, when they started playing, I started listening, kind of listening to the music and everything. I wanted to give them a chance.
Sure.
But to be honest with you, the music, the quality of the musicianship wasn't really up to the level,
yeah.
of the real deal. I got. But not to take away from them, because how many musicians can act?
Yeah, and
I mean? It goes both ways.
Sure.
I'm not speaking negatively.
No, I got you.
Or negatively about the other, because that it applies to both sides. But they were, I think it was just really, there was okay. I have to tell you something that I've noticed from going back and listening to our episodes of this show.
Sure.
I have a tendency to do what's similar to what Jimmy Stewart used to do.
Okay.
Jimmy Stewart, when he does his dialogue, there's a lot of times where he goes, and I notice when I was listening back to our interviews, I do that a lot.
You know, Gar?
And I just caught myself doing it, and that's why I stopped to tell you, because I was doing it just before I'm telling you right now.
Yeah, you know, Gar, I think it's a matter of this, that when I listen back to some of the stuff we do, I love all the episodes we've done, but the thing is, when we get into these discussions, we get so, I know this is true of me, get so excited and get so into what we're talking about that sometimes, like when I'm trying to think of a name, Steel Panther just now, it was on the tip of my tongue, and I had to think about it for a minute, you know, because like I do write a lot of this stuff down, but I don't want it to sound like, you know, I'm reading off the paper, so we kind of free form, and that's what happens. What I find interesting in listening back to some of the stuff that I find that I do a lot, I try to kind of correct it. I find a lot of times I say that is interesting, so I try not to do that as much, but I still, like, even in this episode, done it a few times. But hey,
well, we all have our little quirks.
Yeah.
I had to point that out, you know, because I noticed that.
Yeah.
And I just noticed that I was just doing it.
It's all good, Gar. It's all good.
Whenever I do it, just laugh.
Yeah, it's all good, Gar, because
it is funny.
It's all good because it's all about being able to critique yourself, and that's how these shows get better and better. I mean, like I listened back to episode 1, which was on 90 Years of Dracula, and that's a pretty good episode, but as we've gone on with these shows, they just get better and better. But it's fun to listen back, like you say, and you pick up on these little things you do that you're not even aware of it. You're doing it, but
yeah, little quirks.
But
it's funny.
Yeah, that's what makes it entertaining for people to listen to. Now, getting back into today's episode about the development, which I found really interesting. Michael Mckean and Harry Shearer, along with Rob Reiner, worked on a 1978 TV pilot for a sketch comedy show called The TV Show. Again, keeping it kind of simple, which featured a parody rock band, Spinal Tap. During the production of the TV show, Michael Mckean was burned with oil from an onstage effect. Mckean and guests began to improvise and invented the characters of David St. Hubbins and Nigel Tufneland. So that's how far back this goes. They first got the idea of these guys, including Rob Reiner. They got together. A couple of them knew each other from their college days. And so Spinal Tap dates back to 1978 as far as the idea of the development of this.
Well, you know, it's some things you just never know. I guarantee you, you know, when they met, you know, in the early college days, you know, some of these ideas were in their infancy, things like that, and you know, over time, you know, wound up becoming developed. But you know, it's when you're working, it's just like a musician. When you're working with another musician, you know whether you want to
continue,
invest more of your time in working with that other musician, because you see in that other musician the potential.
Oh, sure.
You know, for, you know, between the two of us working together, there's a potential for something to come out of this.
Oh, sure.
And it's exactly the same thing that, you know, was happening between them, you know, at that time. You know, even though it's not musicians, it's still very similar, you know, because they both involve in art. You know what I mean? The world of creativity.
Yeah.
And so when you're working with somebody, it's the thing that's happening at that time is they're discovering that, hey, this person I'm working with, this has potential.
Yeah, that's why, you know, Gar, this show that we do every 2 weeks, I so enjoy not only doing the show, but doing it with you. And here's the thing, and even just researching for each show, I try to write down as much information as I possibly can. But then I tell myself, you know what, okay, you don't have to write every single thing down, because you got a co-host, and part of the show, he's going to give his input. His input is going to be like 50% of the show. And not only does that include his personality, but he's going to come up with some of the same stuff. He's going to come up with some different stuff that you don't come up with. And when the two of us come together, it's what makes Gar Borras' Time Machine so great.
Well, yeah, and that's what I was kind of alluding to when I wrote that piece on Facebook.
Yeah.
You know, just to let people know, in case there's people out there
don't know about it still. Yeah.
They're on my Facebook. Yeah. You know, that don't know about it and stuff like that. You know, and you know, it's a collaboration, and that's I think that's what we kind of discovered in the very beginning when we were doing it, that you know, this was becoming kind of a collaboration rather than just an interview.
Yeah. That's why I don't even call them interviews anymore. It's more of a show, a discussion, you know. And each guy brings an equal amount, you know, and it's not even one guy doing more than the other. I think it's really an equal amount, and it would be a very different show if I was to do it, for example, on my own, or even with another co-host, because they would bring whatever to the table, but it'd be a different show, and that's just the truth of it.
Well, that's what they call chemistry.
Yeah, and that's why we keep going on, because like you said, so many times that we've discussed, Gar, this is one show where, I mean, I've already got in my head, you know, but we've kind of discussed the next 5 shows, already kind of know what we're going to talk about. There's no end in sight, and that's what makes this, you know, so fun. But, you know, get back to today's episode. Another thing I really kind of thought was a fun little fact. It said Christopher Guest had previously played guitar under the name of Nigel Tufneland on Michael Mckean and David L. Lander's album Lenny and the Squigtones. Now, I'd when we done our episode on Laverne and Shirley, I posted some video of because the two guys that played Lenny and Squiggy, of course, Michael Mckean and his counterpart David L. Lander. These characters got so popular that they even had a record that they did, and that's what this Lenny and the Squigtones was. And if you go on YouTube and type in Lenny and the Squigtones, you'll some stuff will come up, which is pretty fun for anybody that's a Laverne and Shirley fan, you know.
Well, you know, that goes all the way back to the Laverne and Shirley episode that we did.
Yeah.
That, you know, that was the Michael McKean's, you know, first big splash
into music,
in front of America.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, he has just, you know, he's getting, you know, up there now, you know, in age, and you know, he has a career to be very proud of.
Yeah.
Because maybe, you know, I mean, he does have crown jewels like Spinal Tap and Laverne and Shirley and other things that he's well known for that have been very, very successful. But, you know, but more to that, you know, I mean, he just kept constantly working all these years, doing all kinds of different projects. And so he's constantly stayed busy through all these years, and has been very successful. One of my favorite shows, you know, that I love to watch nowadays.
Yeah.
You know, you don't really. I discovered it on the Food Network.
Okay.
But you know, and they were just showing it on the Food Network for just a certain amount of time, and then once it ran its course, they basically yanked it, and they'll probably bring it back up and put it back on, you know, and it'll you know, it kind of goes in cycles. They put it on and they take it off, and you know what I mean. But it's a show that he narrates called Food, Fact, or Fiction.
I'll have to look that up. Wow.
And it is such a really cool show because there is always, it's kind of like our, you know, this our little show here, where, you know, when it's all different stories about food, you know, the history of this food, or the history of Thanksgiving, or the history of, you know, I mean, and every different type of food has a origination and a history, and you know, and all kinds of, and it's all really interesting. Yeah,
I mean, another thing that you and I were able to kind of tap on in conjunction with that, in one of our past episodes was, I think it was, come to find out, like they did not have TV dinners, until the 1950s, and then that was after they invented the TV train. And you don't think of stuff like that. You think, oh, all of a sudden people can eat, they can eat dinner in front of a TV. It's just we're so accustomed to stuff you don't think about. There was a time when that did not exist.
Well, okay, we're getting off topic, but I want to continue a little bit.
Yeah, sure, buddy.
Now, I was around at that time.
Yeah.
And there was the traditional where it was considered proper for the family to sit down at the dinner table and eat dinner. And it was a family social moment. And historically, with families, that was the way it was for a long time.
Sure.
Dating all the way back to the Industrial Revolution. Dad coming home from work,
watching the news,
getting off work at around 5 or whatever, eating dinner with the family at 6, and you all sat at the table, and it was a family social moment.
Sure.
Now, here we are in the 60s, and they introduced TV trays and TV dinner.
Yeah.
And all of it was new. TV was new.
Yeah.
TV dinners was new. The TV trays. When I was a kid, that was a big deal.
Oh, sure.
Because there was a big cultural shift away from the, stodgy, everybody sitting at the table, doing the traditional thing. And now all of a sudden it's being infringed on by this, TV dinner thing and everything like that. And there were a lot of families in the 60s that made it a family rule that when it was dinner time, that TV got turned off. It was a family rule.
Yeah.
The TV
You're so right. Yeah.
And everybody bellied up to the table and did the traditional family social time. Just like nowadays, families will ban people from using their cell phone at dinner.
Yeah.
There are families that make it a rule that when you're sitting down with the family at the table, no cell phones.
Yeah.
Well, back in the day, back in the 60s, those same people that are making that rule for their kids had to go by a very similar rule, that TV got turned off, and there were they were turning their nose up to the TV dinner and the TV tray, and they were saying, we're going to do it the right way. This is how you do it. You sit at the table with the family. So there was a real kind of a culture clash that happened at that time because of that. And a lot of people, they just know about the TV dinners and about the TV trays, but they don't know about how it affected people culturally and socially at the time.
Oh, sure.
It was very, very, very big deal and very profound going on at that time.
Oh, sure.
Now, back to Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
There was a time that I sat down and I watched Spinal Tap on TV with the TV tray, with the TV dinner.
Okay. Yeah.
And that is a dang true story.
Wow. And a little more, this is Spinal Tap. Apparently it was shot in Los Angeles. The film took a total of 5 weeks to film. Just think about that, Gar. I mean, it's an hour and a half movie, and you watch it, and it only took 5 weeks to do all that. And what's interesting, I was reading, they have and it's included on a DVD if you have a DVD of that they recently came out with. They got over 100 hours of extra footage. From what I understand, they had so much footage that they shot. It took 3 people to edit the film.
I am such a huge fan of that movie. I would love to see all that stuff that wound up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah, and it said the scene where the band visits Elvis Presley's grave was actually filmed in Altadena, California. So again, that's kind of it's a mock set, because Elvis isn't buried in Altadena, but that was a mock set. But and it also said the band sings "Heartbreak Hotel" because that was the only Elvis Presley song that producer Karen Murphy could obtain the rights to feature in the film. So again, they chose to sing that song because that's the only song that they could get the rights to.
Guns N' Roses in their early years, back in the say like somewhere between 85 and 88.
Yeah.
Actually recorded a demo of Heartbreak Hotel, and our band liked it so much we actually play Guns N' Roses version of that song.
Oh wow!
We don't do it in every set.
Yeah.
We dust it off and pop it in the set every once in a while. And I have to admit, Guns N' Roses version of Heartbreak Hotel, I really like it. It freaking rocks.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Yeah. And here's another funny part of the movie was when the band's manager Ian convinces the band that the new all-black album cover would have the same appeal to fans as the Beatles' white album cover had. Can you imagine?
Well, it's funny because the Beatles was the first to come out with an all one color album.
Yeah.
They were the first to do that, and when they did it, it was a big freaking deal. There were so many people, because it was so out of the norm to do that, there were so many people that had a problem with it. I mean, they got angry about the fact that the Beatles did that. A lot of people, and this must be why you enjoy doing this show with me, is because I bring up these stories.
Sure, yeah, that's part of it.
The side to the coin that people don't know about because they, but I was alive and I was a huge Beatles fan at the time.
Yeah.
And it's true. When they came out with the White Album, there were an element to society that got very angry that they came out with an all-white album. Why? Nobody knows.
Yeah. And here's another interesting fact on the background of the film and the development. It says Rob Reiner got $60,000 from Marble Arch Productions to write a screenplay with Mckean, Guest, and Shearer based on the Spinal Tap characters they had created. They quickly all realized, though, after just a few days of writing, that no script could have captured the kind of movie they wanted to make. This is why they then shot a short demo of the film they wanted to make, and they shopped the demo around to several studios, but no one showed any interest in the film until television writer and producer Norman Lear, who Rob Reiner had previously worked with when he starred on All in the Family, decided he would back the project.
Wow.
Yeah, it's something I'd never known until doing this. So once again, we learned something new.
If it wasn't for Norman Lear, we might not be having
this discussion
right now.
Yeah,
and that's the doggone truth.
Yeah, and then again, this is something we were talking about earlier. It says virtually all the dialogue in the film was ad-libbed by the actors throughout the filming of This Is Spinal Tap. The actors were told when and where each scene would start and end. They were given necessary character information to avoid any contradictions, but everything else came from the actors. Most of the film, Rob Reiner decided to use first takes of each scene in an effort to capture more natural reactions. So again, he's kind of letting these guys take control and kind of develop these characters, gives them information on who each guy is supposed to be, but it allows them to kind of just run wild. And part of that they felt was, okay, if we're just kind of going to go wild and ad-lib, we can get more natural reactions from the other people in the scene.
Well, another thing about a critical element to the success of the movie was people getting it. Because that was an element, that did have an effect on the movie. There was a lot of people that got it, and they saw the humor and they understand it, and you know, and loved you know, the tongue in cheek and the poking fun at the stereotypes. But there was also at the same time an element to society that did not get it. Did not like the movie. I remember you know, the movie had been, you know, successful for such a long time, and you know, and I had always raved about the movie, so I went to show the movie to my son-in-law. Yeah. And we were watching the movie, and we got about halfway through the movie, and I realized he was not finding any of it funny.
Wow. So
he wasn't getting it. Yeah. He wasn't finding any of it funny, and I could just tell that he was not enjoying the movie. Wow. That's interesting. So I offered to turn it off, and he took me up on the offer. He didn't like the movie. So there are some people that get the movie, and there are some people that just will never get the movie.
Yeah, and it said since its 1984 release, This Is Spinal Tap has received high praise from critics, and it's still considered one of the best films released in 1984. Speaking of critics, Gar, Roger Ebert placed This Is Spinal Tap on his 10 best list of 1984. In 2001, Ebert said it was one of the funniest movies ever made. So, from 1984 to 2001, Roger Ebert's opinion of the movie had only gotten better. And at that point, he considered it like one of the funniest movies ever. Now, again, this did not make the list of American Film Institute's top funniest movies of all time. I don't think it was even on there, but still. Enough of the people have watched this film that it is considered a cult classic. And when you talk a little bit about Michael McKean and the kind of success he's had throughout his career, it's interesting because you look back at, of course, Laverne and Shirley, where a lot of us first came to know him as the lovable Lenny, of Lenny and Squiggy fame. That's kind of a character he would go on to be loved for. All these years later, I know when I think of Michael McKean, probably I think of him mostly and most fondly as a part of Lenny. I also think of him as from Spinal Tap, David St. Hubbins. But that's the point, is that those are the only two things he'd ever done. He's still a successful actor. And even the other guys, they might not have had a successful career, but they're all comedy writers, and this is just this one film alone. People are still talking about it all these years later, and I can't believe next year it turns 40 years old. So there is something to be said for that.
Oh my gosh, 40! Yikes! I was around when it came out.
Yeah, and one more thing about Michael McKean. As far as Laverne and Shirley goes, he's the last man standing. All his other cast, could you imagine being him? All your other castmates from that show have passed on. Most recently, Cindy Williams, but up until recently, they were the last two, and now he's the last man standing.
Well, to me, I just, every single thing that Michael McKean does, I absolutely love. Yeah. I don't think he's ever done anything that I've ever seen him do that I didn't like it.
Yeah, and Rob Reiner is another key player in this film. He's a director, but he stars in it as well as the lovable Marty. But he also went on to have, this was the first thing he ever, but he's gone on to have a very successful directing career. I got to ask, what do you think about him as a director?
His body of work speaks for itself.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? If he wasn't a good director, he would not have had the kind of success that he had as a director.
Yeah. And even as an actor, you look at what he did on All in the Family. He was only on there for like 3 or 4 seasons, but it was a memorable part. I mean, between all the like back and forth between him and Archie, you know, that's one of the things people love the most about that show.
Well, he will forever, for some people, he will forever be remembered as the meathead.
Yeah, a lovable meathead. And again, I was so amazed to find out Norman Lear had a connection to this film. I'd never heard that before. And again, it's another portray to Norman Lear. I mean, I don't think he'd ever done another film. He's mostly known for TV, and it's very different from what he was known for getting involved with.
Well, you know, everything has evolved, and over the years, you know, the whole way that they used to make TV shows was completely different, and a season was 25 episodes at least.
Oh, sure. And you know, Gar,
you know, and now I just watched The Mandalorian.
Oh, okay, yeah.
A season of The Mandalorian is 5 episodes.
Wow. Yeah, just
5 episodes. That's it. And now I love The Mandalorian, but now I gotta wait a year to watch 5 more episodes. I'm starting to get a really bad taste in my mouth.
There you go.
About this TV shows that are coming out with like 5 episodes and calling that a season.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've heard people say about stuff like that is everybody wants it like right now. Like, I'm going to wait till they post all 5 episodes. I'm going to spend a whole day doing that. It's not like it used to be, unfortunately. And, you know, I think in wrapping up today's episode, Gar, the thing I will say that I think that these guys were very smart in doing was this is Spinal Tap. Of course, it wasn't, at the time, it wasn't that successful to kind of warrant a sequel. But I'm kind of surprised that they never created a sequel. But I think they were smart, because if you were to come out with, like, all these years later, either a remake or a sequel to it, I don't think it would stand up to the original, especially if they thought, okay, well, we're gonna get new actors in that to play the parts. They, as great of actors they might get, it just would, they could not do what the original cast did.
Well, you know, I think that we do touch on this subject in a lot of our episodes of The Time Machine, but doing sequels is like trying to catch your lightning in a bottle twice. Yeah,
I mean, it's that's the thing. This is, I think, proof of you don't mess with a classic, you know, and so it was real fun doing this today, Gar. I really enjoyed watching the film again for the first time in years. In my experience, it was just as funny as the first time I saw it. And it's funny that your son-in-law had that experience, but it may be a generational thing. It may be, because he's so much younger, it just is not funny. You know, people today, they have a different sense of humor, maybe from when we were growing up, and that's all right, because the world is a different place.
All of that stuff is changing, and what my generation used to find funny, following generations are not finding as funny. So yeah, it's a natural progression. You can't. The only thing in life that stays the same is change. Yeah,
it changes. Change is the one constant thing, and like it or not, you got to kind of embrace it, or you get stuck behind the times.
Or you're gonna get run over like
a mad truck, yeah. And this was so much fun, Gar, doing it today. Next time when we do episode number 42, we're going to talk about. It's been a while since we talked about a game show. Last time we talked about The Price is Right. I thought, let's talk about a classic game show, and next time we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorites, The Family Feud.
Oh, boy. Everybody has memories of watching Family Feud. I don't think that anyone doesn't have at least a slice of their life where they spent time watching that show.
Even today, They still are filming new episodes. Of course, they got a different host, and it's a different take on it. And I'm not going to lie and say I don't turn it on from time to time. But in my opinion, it's not what it once was, and we're going to get into that. But one thing I was surprised that I've since found out since I was a kid is I thought the original host, Richard Dawson, I thought that was where he first became famous, was on the Family Feud. Came to find out.
Yeah, he was actually an actor before that.
I had no idea, but we'll get into all that next time. So, Gar, I know you're on the road and you pulled over. So,
actually, what I'm doing is our band is doing a special rehearsal today. We rehearse at our guitarist is a pilot. He has an airplane, and what we do is we rehearse in his airplane hangar, which is kind of cool.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
You know, it's way better than a rehearsal room, an hourly rehearsal room. And so, I just got here, early, because we're going to start, we're all supposed to start rehearsing at around 1.
Okay.
And it's a different, we're specifically rehearsing our entire show. We're not rehearsing particular songs or anything. We're actually going to rehearse the entire show.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So what we're doing is we're taking our show to a new level.
Okay. Well, Gar.
So that's what we're doing, and so that's the reason why I'm over here at the airport.
Oh.
I'm not really on the road or anything. I'm just got here early
Chaotic Riffs Magazine.